Underworld podcast subscribers, first of all, a massive thanks for being the best people in the world. You knew that already. I'm actually training my son to say thank you Underworld podcast Patreon members as his first words. It's taking about 8 hours a day and he wails himself to sleep every night, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. Anyway, welcome to episode 1 of Stash House, the weekly news roundup from the Underworld podcast. Each week we'll aggregate the biggest and most interesting stuff in organised crime that you may have missed, and we'll publish it here on a subscriber feed. Now, Danny's knee-deep in another project today, so I'm on the job, and I'm going to start in the Pacific Ocean, although not here in New Zealand, right over the other side, 6,000 miles away and off the coast of South America in the Galapagos Islands, an external territory of Ecuador, famous for its pristine atolls, giant tortoises, and Charles Darwin. Oh yeah, and now, of course, drug cartels. The Washington Post this week published an article from Isabela, one of the archipelago's most desolate islands, where over the past couple years it has been visited by private and heavily laden Cessna planes, which experts claim are using the UNESCO World Heritage Site Galapagos, which are roughly 600 miles west of the port city of Guayaquil, as transshipment points. This is, of course, Ecuador, where Mexican and Albanian organised crime groups have fueled one of the world's most alarming spikes in cartel violence anywhere on Earth, and it all went rather bonkers last week. Writes the WAPO, quote, "On Tuesday, armed men terrorized the country in a series of apparently coordinated attacks, car bombings, prison riots, police kidnappings. One group took over a television station during a live broadcast and held the staff at gunpoint. President Daniel Noboa took the extraordinary step of declaring an armed internal conflict in the country. Quote, we are in a state of war." Yesterday, Noboa announced that scores of hostages, mostly prison guards, taken by prison gangs have been released. But the murder rate there is now 4 times higher than it was in 2018. Why? Well, the simple answer is, of course, cocaine whack-a-mole. Rub out activity in one part of Latin America, another hotspot arrives in its place. Ecuadorian authorities seized a record 176 tons of cocaine in 2021, almost double that of 2020. And given presidential candidates are being assassinated and prison gang riots are claiming thousands of lives, there is likely way more flooding through the nation today. The Galapagos Islands are the cartel's latest attempt to evade seizures. Insiders call it the, quote, desert route. In 2023, Ecuador's navy seized almost 25 tons of cocaine around the archipelago, from just 10 in 2022. Fishermen are offered several times their salary to carry drugs. Quote, lots of people have become millionaires off of this, one man told the WAPO. Noboa spoke to the BBC on Friday, telling the broadcaster he would stop Ecuador becoming a narco state and advocate for a heavy crackdown. He also told US network Telemundo that, quote, we aren't going to hunt people down and kill them, but we are at war and we are fighting against people who are heavily armed, organised, with domestic and international financial backing and a structure of terror and criminality that reaches far beyond Ecuador's borders. I'll have more on this and why Ecuador is descending into chaos in my next Underworld pod episode, so listen out for that, guys. Now across to Papua New Guinea, where soldiers are now patrolling the streets of capital city Port Moresby after widespread riots which broke out last Wednesday and that have so far claimed the lives of 22 people. The violence was sparked after public servants, including, crucially, police, went on strike over pay cuts. Within hours, looting and vandalism had erupted in Moresby, home to an estimated 500,000 people, although no one really knows the true population. While so-called rascal gangs used the pandemonium, it seems, to settle scores with their enemies. Prime Minister James Marape has declared a 14-day state of emergency and told soldiers to keep the peace, with the military monitoring hours-long queues at gas stations throughout the city. Quote, not only have our security forces failed us, but some of them went out of their way to incite or encourage our people to loot. That's from National Capital District Governor Powers Parkop on Friday. It's pretty hard on the police. Marape hasn't ruled out asking Australia to deploy peacekeepers to Moresby, but Papua New Guinea only became independent from Australia in 1975, and Australia's role in the 10-year Bougainville crisis has left an additional sour taste in the throats of locals when it comes to Canberra. As you probably know, I was in Port Moresby only a few weeks ago, and the piece I'm working on there, I'll also cover on this podcast in due course. This is definitely something to keep an eye on, guys, as tensions are still extremely high in Port Moresby and other cities across Papua New Guinea. And across to the Red Sea now, where unless you've been under a rock, you will know that the US and UK have launched strikes on Yemen's Houthi rebels, who have attacked commercial ships amid the war between Israel and Gaza. Some have compared the Houthis to their neighbours, the Somalis, and their own history in piracy. But a Politico article published last week says this challenge is much tougher. Quote, "The threat from Somali pirates was different in scale compared to what the Houthis present as a threat to shipping," said John Strawput, senior manager at the International Chamber of Shipping, to the outlet. "The Houthis are much better armed," he adds. "They have a much greater capability in terms of attacking and boarding vessels, and their munitions are a significant order higher than anything we saw the Somali pirates use." Now, it doesn't seem clear what the coalition's plans are to squash the Iran-backed Houthis, who I'm dithering on whether to do a show about. I mean, they're a perfect coalescence of crime, politics and religion, but it's also quite political, which we tend to avoid. But that doesn't mean the Somali threat has died. Quite the opposite, in fact. Somalis have hijacked no fewer than 4 vessels this month alone, raising fears the whole thing is being coordinated. Writes my friend and friend of the pod, Michael Scott Moore, at New Lines this week, quote, "The likelihood that Somali pirates would just happen to re-impair in the context of the Gaza war has also been hotly debated. Are they phantom pirates? In other words, does the Pentagon just want to lower the temperature with Iran? Or have the Houthis themselves resorted to proxy warfare?" It's fascinating stuff. And we'll post a link to Michael's excellent story alongside all the others cited in this episode in the show notes, of course. Now, finally, to crime news a little bit lighter. From my own adopted home of Aotearoa, New Zealand, where an Auckland renter who discovered a man hiding in a ceiling has won compensation. Felino Turner moved into his rented unit in April 2023, but problems with his neighbours in Unit 3 began on day 1. Writes News Hub, quote, "He had a washing machine delivered to his front door, only for a man, later identified as David, to take the washing machine and roll it into Unit 3. Turner called the police, and the washing machine was recovered. In the wake of this welcome, Turner installed a security camera to record incidents that occurred on his doorstep and in the common area in front of his unit. Incidents ranged from people urinating on the outside wall of his unit, exposing themselves to his camera, peering through his windows, and looking at the mailbox. And you thought you had bad neighbours." Turner says the folks in Unit 3 ate his Uber Eats deliveries, threw rubbish across the yard, and made, quote, "gang hand signals," indicating that one or more of them was involved in drug trafficking. Now, it should be added here that New Zealand has just recorded its highest ever cocaine figures, and foreign cartels are eyeing it as potentially the most profitable drug market on earth. And that is for another bonus I'll be doing very soon from right here in Wellington. But Turner turned to cops when, after investigating the ceiling cavity above his unit, he saw a person from Unit 3 trying to hide. After cops took the person away, one of their flatmates approached Turner and told him, quote, "Suck my dick. Next time I see you, I'll beat the shit out of you, you dumb American." Good news then finally arrived for Turner this week when he was awarded 955 New Zealand dollars in compensation for harassment, in addition to damages for various items installed to monitor the movements of Unit 3. So sometimes crime really doesn't pay. That is your first installment of Stash House, guys. Don't Instagram your crimes, and we'll be back next week, as always, with tons more.